Good morning, explorers. Happy New Year, and welcome back to another episode of More to Explore, where Mike and I get to keep you in the loop with everything happening at explore.org. And with the new year comes new hummingbirds, and we are currently looking at live video of Ariana's hummingbird nest, and we are expecting to start seeing some eggs very soon. Mike and I have been watching her during the countdown. She's been buzzing in and out, working hard, building her nest, so I'm sure we'll see her soon throughout the show. And we're also going to be checking out some of the best highlights from the past couple of weeks. If this is your first time watching the show, please let us know in the comments. If you don't know me, my name is Brian Bird, and I normally work behind the scenes for all of our live chats. But every other Monday, I get to co host this show with somebody who I'm sure you'll recognize if you've ever seen an Explore live chat or even the play by plays, our resident naturalist, Mike Fitz. Mike, Happy New Year.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Great to be back for another year of more to explore. And there's a ton to see, of course. We're glad to happy, or we're happy to have everybody here today. If you're new to explore.org, welcome to the community. And of course, welcome back to all of our long-time viewers. We are the world's largest live nature cam network with more than 180 live cameras all over the world. So there's always something to see. And in our YouTube chat, Lisa has said hi. Aryana Hummingbird is actually here saying hello. So yeah, thanks for helping us showcase the beauty of hummingbirds. Greyfax, Rita, Carrie. Yeah, thanks to everybody who's said hello so far. And if you have comments or questions for us, please drop those in the chats during the broadcast. We'll do our best to look for those and try to answer a few questions as we head along. But we are watching right now this live look in at the Aryana Hummingbird nest in Southern California. We first introduced this camera, I think, during our very first More to Explore show in February 2023. So it seems
That's right.
fitting in the new year that we introduce her new nest. And Brian, you were there. You recently set up this cam. So, when I'm looking at this, I'm like, well, what's the sense of scale on it? It really seems to be hard to get a sense of how big the nest is while we're looking at it on the cam. So how would you describe, sort of the nest size itself and the tree, what that looks like?
Yeah, it's very, very small. Yeah, this cam is near me in Laguna Niguel, California. And I set up the cam this year, and it was a challenge to get a shot like this because it really is the size of a golf ball, and the trees have many small little branches intertwining, and just be able to get a clear shot like this was definitely a challenge. But I'm excited that we got to see it early while she's still building the nest, so we will have a front row seat as soon as she starts laying eggs.
This nest showcases the work of a female Allen's hummingbird. We call her Ariana, but her species is the Allen's hummingbird as we know it. And last year, the first egg on this cam hatched on January 31. A second egg hatched on February 1. So, given her past record of nesting behavior, we can look forward to Ariana tending to the nest and laying and incubating her eggs over the rest of the month. We'll go on egg watch for hatching at the end of the month, hopefully. And hummingbirds, they are busy bodies. They have some of the highest metabolisms ever measured in animals. They need a tremendous amount of fuel to power their flight and stay warm. The work and energy needed increases even more for mother hummingbirds. She doesn't get help from males. Plus, Allen's hummingbird chicks fledge in about 21 days. So the turnaround time from egg laying to fledging is relatively short, and it's a ton of work. And Brian, this is maybe from earlier today, that little clip.
Yeah, so these were some highlights from the last couple of days, and we do have one from even just this morning. You can see her hard at work bringing in more fluff and twigs just to build it. And I love that this little stomp that she's doing, just kind of like pushing all of it around to build that little nest bowl.
That's got to be the warmest, most cozy little bird nest you could find. There's so much to
Oh,
admire about
and
these
here she is
birds,
live,
and
cutting back to live. She
oh,
just
great,
came back.
great look at her doing some tending to the nest. And where we're watching her here, pay particular attention to like her throat feathers and her body feathers because they'll change colors depending on how they're oriented to the light. And close-ups like this really give us a great opportunity to observe the beauty of hummingbirds, especially the uniqueness of their feathers.
Yeah, and our partners with Ariana Hummingbird is actually a rehabber for hummingbirds as well, and she was showing me the close-ups of some hummingbird feathers, and here they are through a magnifying glass, just to see how, like, just the detail of how incredibly small they are. But also, Mike, what you were mentioning, just the amazing difference of the feathers in the light, how they change is spectacular.
It really is. Bird feathers contain pigments that absorb and reflect light, like the pigments in our own skin and hair. That many bird feathers have structural features that scatter and refract light. So this produces colors and color combinations that pigments cannot. Many shades of color, in fact, can only be produced by combining the properties of pigments and structure. So this is an adaptation that explains why the colors of some of their feathers differ with the slightest change in orientation. And the phenomenon is exemplified by the gorget of feathers at the throat of hummingbirds. So like that bright patch of feathers on a hummingbird's throat changes really, in microseconds, depending on how the bird is oriented those feathers in and out of light. You can see it best in males, but you can also see it in females like Aryana too. And one final thought on this is that bird eyes are sensitive to a wider range of the light spectrum than human eyes. They can see some infrared light that we can only feel as heat, and they can see color in the ultraviolet spectrum that is invisible to us. So if we think their throat feathers look amazing and bold in light like this, it must be even more dazzling for the individual hummingbirds themselves. So over the next, couple of months, Ariana, the Allen's hummingbird, she'll display her hard work, her beauty, her commitment to her nestlings, and of course, some remarkable adaptations along the way. So it's just one of the many things to look forward to on Explore.org. Brian, though, lots to share today in the show. So where are we headed to next?
Yeah, lots of clips coming up, but we're on the west coast of California. We're going to head over to Florida. We're heading over to the Homosassa Springs State Park, where we can see all kinds of babies. And in this clip, we have a young manatee.
Early winter is the peak of manatee season on Explore.org. And Florida manatees are what we're watching on these cameras. They range widely in coastal waters during summer, but they're not adapted to surviving in cold water. In fact, they have little body fat and they experience cold stress and hypothermia in water generally colder than 68 degrees Fahrenheit, I should say, excuse me. So during the winter, the North American population of manatees congregates in Florida around sources of consistently warm water, such as freshwater springs. These are refugia for manatees where they can socialize and they can stay warm when water temperatures away from the springs are otherwise too cold and uncomfortable for them. We'll sometimes see a mother and calf on the cams too, like this pair. Manatee calves remain with their mothers for 1 to 2 years. Many manatee calves also suckle milk from teats located behind the mother's front flippers. So if you see a small manatee shoving its face into another manatee's armpit, then it could be a calf looking for milk. And according to our webcam partner, Save the Manatee Club, you can also identify a mother calf pair by the way they position themselves when they swim. A calf always swims on the side of its mother, unlike unrelated manatees that swim single file. This clip is great too because we're getting such a close-up look at the face of the young manatee, and you can see how it has its nostrils closed. A lot of marine mammals have this as an adaptation that keeps water out of their noses while they're underwater. And if you've ever tried to do like a somersault or something under the water, then you realize how important it can be to keep water out of your nose. So manatees have a great adaptation to help them do that. So lots of activity on the Homosassa Springs cam, and then also at our other location at Blue Springs State Park on January 5, I think, which is the latest update on their website. So if you're going to savethemanatee.org, you can find updates there on the number of manatees every day. The last report, January 5, let's see, counted 428 manatees, and the river temperature was chilly, so it was about 60.1 degrees Fahrenheit or 15.6 degrees Celsius. So that's going to bring a lot of manatees to the spring. So great watching for manatees right now. They're like I mentioned before, they're seeking refugia at these springs. They're seeking comfort at the freshwater springs, and as a fellow warm-blooded mammal, I can relate to their need to seek warm water because I'm kind of a cold water wimp myself, even though I enjoy cold weather. Uh, it's a great time of the year, Brian, to watch other marine mammals on explore.org and their young as well. We've been checking in on some pinnipeds doing their thing.
Yeah, heading up off the coast of Maine, up by you, Mike, we have the beloved seal cam.
That's right. We're getting some glimpses of gray seals and their newborn pups at Seal Island on the Seal Island National Wildlife Refuge south of Rockland, Maine. So this is out in the Gulf of Maine itself. In this clip here, uh, the the fluffy white seals are the pups, and the more drab brown ones are the adults. The pupping season starts in December and ends in February. And after mothers wean their pups, the juvenile seals remain on the island for 3 to 4 weeks for a post-season fast that their body uses to transition in preparation for a diet of fish when they finally enter the water. Unfortunately, the cam infrastructure on Seal Island didn't fare well during a powerful winter storm on December 17 and 18. The southern half of Maine was hit especially hard by wind, and some coastal areas experienced near hurricane force winds. Several 100,000 people lost power, and some people were without power for about a week. There was, I think, 4 inches of rain that fell on the headwaters of the Kennebec River, and the river in Augusta rose something like 20 feet in 12 hours. So things were quite rough for a while. And the seals are just, I was thinking about the seals during the storm when I was watching it rage outside, and they're just out there on the island doing their thing, like basically shrugging it off because they're so well adapted to these cold conditions. They live in the ocean basically their whole lives. So, yeah, things were rough for a while, and hopefully we'll get, I think, maybe some more views into the lives of these seals in the future. But Brian, yeah, it's going to take a little bit of work maybe to get the cams fully restored.
Yeah, definitely. And even though the seals are well adapted, electronics are not. And as much as, our field team does amazing work to weatherproof these systems as much as possible, but sometimes a big storm like this will come in and it could be as simple as knocking a radio out of alignment, or in this case, some of the solar equipment may have been damaged. So, but I can say one of the sealed cams was turned up this morning. It is live now, so definitely go check it out after this show.
Oh, that's what I'll be doing actually when I get my lunch. Yeah, because it we're looking to see if we can repair the cams. Although repairs are always difficult in this location, and it's even harder in winter when the sea is rough. It's because the island itself is only accessible by boat. There's no dock to get on the island either. So the wind needs to be favorable. It needs to be relatively calm. Tide has to be right. You have to jump off of a little boat onto the rocks with waves crashing around you. Plus, any repair efforts must first ensure that it doesn't disturb the seals. So that's kind of like first and foremost in our minds when we're thinking about what to do at this time of the year. Hopefully, we'll get more views of the gray seals soon. On the other side of the continent, though, in British Columbia, our sea lion cam at Orca Lab is working quite well, and we've been enjoying some family life there too.
Yeah, definitely. And this clip was actually taken yesterday of the sea lion pup nursing right here.
And when we, watch gray seals, and then we maybe head across the continent to the sea lions in British Columbia, we have a chance to explore how these species differ in their lifestyles and parenting strategies. So these are California sea lions. They're gregarious and social, both in water and out of water. Mothers also care for the young for about 1 year. So that's a kind of a big difference between them and gray seals. Gray seals wean their pups after nursing them only about 16 days, and then they provide no further parental care. So it's a much longer duration of parental care in sea lions. And this requires a different parenting strategy in a sense than hanging out on an island with your newborn pups for a few weeks, like the gray seals. So sea lions will separate their nursing and feeding activities. From what I've read, a mother will stay at a haul out with her pup for about 1 to 2 days. She then leaves to forage for a few days. So there's a period of time where the pups really aren't eating or drinking anything while mother is away in the water. But she comes back, she spends some time there, gives the pup the opportunity to, again, get hydrated and gain some body mass before it eventually can take its first swim. And we'll get to see a lot of socialization between the sea lions on this cam. On calm days, the audio is great too. Sea lions are
Yes,
extremely
definitely.
vocal, and I love that, Brian. You know, to tune into this cam and just hear them snorting and growling and belching at one another. So if you want to hear some almost otherworldly sounds, then tune into this cam. And it's one of the great things to do on Explore.org. We can transition between different ecosystems, compare and contrast different species and habitats. Of course, we can do that on different continents as well.
Definitely. One of the best things about Exploded you can literally travel the world in 10 minutes or even less. So let's head over to the Africa cameras. We have amazing views all the time from both of our partners from Africam and the Impala Research Center. And here's some of the best gatherings from the last couple weeks, starting with these buffalo.
Yeah, setting aside the attraction to water for the species that we'll see in the next several clips, I think a common thread that I saw among them is that they all show herds of large mammals, which got me wondering, why do animals herd together? Since animal behavior is complex, there's no simple answer, although there is a lot of overlap with the reasons that people might gather and live together in communities. For one thing, herd animals find security and safety among their own kind. There are more eyes, ears, and noses to sense danger. Group living can help protect young individuals. The risk of predation is lessened. The collective knowledge of leaders in a herd can help increase the knowledge and survival of others in the herd. Elephants exemplify this. They live in matrilineal groups with elder females leading and passing on their knowledge to younger individuals. Uh, big bull elephants, the older bull elephants also keep the younger male elephants in line in many ways. And like everything in nature, though group living has its trade-offs. If food is scarce, then maybe you could have a harder time getting access to it in a herd if you're not a dominant individual. And maybe you could be at greater risk of catching a contagious disease since you're in close contact with others of your kind. And for a lot of animals, the costs are worth it. They're worth the benefits that they experience. And this is something that I talk about with the rangers during bear cam season in summer. We're always talking about how individual bears make choices between risk and reward. That same choice is being applied by animals on a species level too. So it drives their evolution, including whether herd living is a winning strategy. And for many animals, social living and living in a herd certainly is worthwhile. And Brian, we get to see such an amazing diversity of animal behavior on explore.org, and we've highlighted a bunch so far in the show. But we also have cams that highlight domestic animals too, and we shouldn't lose sight of some of those stories we've been following over the past several weeks of animals that are dedicated to helping out people.
Definitely. And that brings us to this adorable clip of a puppy pile with their little training vests on. So it really is something to appreciate with the relationship we have with dogs, and something even more special about seeing a scene like this. But what can you tell us about these future service dogs?
Yeah, these are puppies at Guide Dogs of America. They are just beginning their journey as service dogs to help people with disabilities. The vests are designed to introduce them to the feeling of wearing service dog vests. While you can teach an old dog new tricks, that could be a more difficult process than starting a lesson early in life. So introducing these pups to the look and the feel of the vest helps to condition them to that. They'll soon be old enough to be placed with foster families that help train them in basic obedience and house living skills before they are introduced to the more advanced lessons needed to become a service dog. And these little tykes aren't too far removed from their wild relatives, although they might behave quite a bit differently in the presence of people. But Brian, all dogs are descended from wild wolves.
Yeah, and if you need some wild wolf, or if you need some wolves in your life, especially, you know, as much as they can do a big stretch, maybe just like your pup at home. We definitely, the International Wolf Center is the place to watch these cams. I love watching these cams, seeing these wolves in the snow. It's definitely one of my favorite camps this time of year.
This is the exhibit pack at the International Wolf Center in Ely, Minnesota. even though they are captive and socialized to their caregivers, they're not domesticated animals, and they retain the same instincts as fully wild wolves, including they still possess that uncanny call of the wild.
We can hear it here. Definitely, I lowered the volume on this because it definitely. It's definitely pretty loud. I love it so much.
Yeah, it almost sounded like it was about to blow out the microphone there because they were so loud. Uh, the wolves don't howl at the moon. They do howl when the moon is up, but that's not the reason that they're doing it. They'll howl no matter the phase of the moon. They're doing it to communicate their presence to other pack members and to communicate their presence in a territory. Depending on the tone and volume of it, a howl can be heard several miles away. So it is an effective means of communication. And if you're out in a landscape with wolves and you hear them howling, it really is an amazing experience. There are no wolves known to live in Maine right now, but I do dream of a day in my neck of the woods where I can hear wild wolves howling. The habitat's here, the habitat's intact. There's a lot of forest. There's enough food for them in the form of deer, moose, and smaller mammals like beavers. So if wolves made their way south across the St. Lawrence River Valley from Quebec and into Maine, the only barrier that would prevent their reestablishment is essentially the tolerance of people. Societal tolerance for wildlife is vitally important as we work to live alongside wildlife, and I know that's something that that the people at the International Wolf Center are trying to build uh, among people uh, for to live alongside wild wolves, and it also affects grazing animals too. The further restoration of bison herds, for example, is wholly dependent on how much room we are collectively willing to give them. And we, have a chance to look in on their lives too at the Grasslands National Park in Saskatchewan, Brian. And we got to see them doing some pretty interesting things over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, this is definitely my favorite clip of today. 'Cause there's a couple layers to it. But we're starting out with these buffalo sparring.
And we thought this clip was worthwhile to highlight because it shows a side of bison behavior we don't always see. Bison are creatures that don't give us facial cues that might communicate mood and intention. So we have to look at other signs. But to me, the most interesting thing in this clip, I don't know if everyone saw it. I think we should play it, definitely play it again, because watch the bison in the background. There's a prancing bison that just all of a sudden just goes nuts. And it's like a total photobomb of the situation. Just running, having a good time. Uh, to me, it looks like that bison in the background, especially, is having fun. Some members of the deer family will prance in the presence of predators. Bison aren't members of the deer family, so I'm just kind of extrapolating here. But if you look at an elk and it's prancing, sometimes they'll do that in the presence of predators like wolves, and that biologists think that prancing maybe is just a way for the elk to show off, to say to the wolf that it's feeling fit and strong, and maybe you want to think twice about your next move. But that bison wasn't under the threat of predation. I don't think the bison even prance in the presence of predators. So I think that this bison, yeah, was just enjoying itself. We talk a little or talked earlier about herding animals and how they're social in nature. And herd animals are really good at reading the social cues of the other individuals in their group. So perhaps the prancing bison saw the playful nature of some of its herd mates, and it just decided it wanted to join in. Uh, I'm not sure. I wish we could you know read into the minds of animals a little bit more. I think it would be much easier for us to commingle with them. But they're not us, and we're not them. So we're going to have to pay more attention and study them more carefully to maybe try to learn more about their behaviors. Because the cues that communicate defensiveness or stress in bison, they're not easy to pick up on initially. A stressed bison might do nothing more than raise its tail slightly and look at you. And I think this is why people get themselves into sketchy situations near bison in places like Yellowstone. A bison doesn't show alarm in its face. And since people are so good at reading faces, we might not pick up on the other cues that say back off, jerk, or else. And that's essentially what a bison is doing when it turns and stares at you and raises its tail. Uh, but sorry for that digression, Brian. My point is that there's going to be more in the minds of bison than we can see just by looking at their faces. And the bison in this clip, through their sparring and through the prancing, definitely shows that they, I think, can have a bit of fun.
Definitely. And I love to see it. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with all of us. And that's all of the highlights that we have for today. But I do want to let everybody know that we do have some live events coming up. We have our regular Africam show and Wild Moment shows coming back this week. The Africam show, it's kind of like the live play-by-play style with the Africam cameras. You can see that tomorrow, Tuesday at 6 a.m. Pacific. And then on Thursday, we have the Wild Moment show where they'll show us all the best clips from the Africa cameras on Thursday at 6 a.m. Pacific. And Mike, as far as for the next couple of weeks, we will be back on the 22nd of January for the next More to Explore show. But what cams are you most forward looking at the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, well, gray seals. If we, I'm going to take advantage of that. I think this afternoon since that cam is live. But I've been gravitating too towards manatees, and now that Ariana's getting settled into her nest, I think that's where I'm going to be going from time to time. And what about you?
Definitely, yeah, definitely going to be keeping a sharp eye on Ariana's nest. I have a couple real quick. One that Charlie pulled this clip of this great horned owl on the Mississippi Flyway camera. It's just absolutely
Oh, beautiful.
incredible. The Northern Lights, this one's coming from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. The Northern Lights have been active. And then one that I always tend to gravitate to is the Sloth Playground. You know, a couple buddies hanging around as this clip is properly named. Definitely those cams are the ones I'm looking forward to. And to see other highlighted clips like this, be sure to follow explore.org on your favorite social media platform. Excuse me. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is our main channel, Explore Live Nature Cameras, and this is the channel where we host all of our live events. So be sure to subscribe and click the bell to never miss one of our events in the future. And it looks like that is all the time that we have for today. Let's see if Aryana will visit us one last time. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I really look forward to a great 2024. And of course, none of this would be possible without our amazing volunteer camera operators and moderators. So thank you, thank you, thank you for making all of this possible. And I also want to thank my co-host today, Mike Fitz, and everyone for tuning in today. And join us again on January 22nd for another episode of More to Explore. And until then, happy exploring.